They paid me $50,000 to leave you for your brother. The words hung in our bedroom like shattered glass. My fingers went numb, the small velvet ring box dropping silently onto the carpet. I had come home early to retrieve it. Tonight was our 2-year anniversary, the night I planned to propose. Instead, I found Audrey in tears, Connor with his arm around her shoulders, and a confession that hollowed me from the inside out. Your parents said a violinist would never provide the life I deserved, Audrey continued, her voice breaking. They showed me projections of your career, how musicians like you statistically end up teaching lessons to suburban kids for pocket change. Then they offered me the marketing director position and the money. Blood roared in my ears. Connor stepped forward, hand outstretched. Dom, be reasonable. Mom and Dad were just trying to what? Buy my girlfriend? Arrange my replacement? My voice emerged with a calmness that terrified even me. And you helped them. My own brother. It wasn't like that, he insisted, though his eyes couldn't meet mine. We didn't plan to fall for each other. A laugh escaped me, brittle and cold. How convenient that your feelings aligned perfectly with our parents' $50,000 investment. Audrey's mascara trailed black rivers down her cheeks. I was going to tell you tonight. Before you. God, is that a ring? I kicked the velvet box under the bed, obscuring the 2-carat diamond I'd been saving for over a year to buy. The one luxury I'd permitted myself while living in our cramped apartment, surviving on ramen and ambition. How long? I asked, the question scraping my throat. Audrey's silence told me everything. 6 months, Connor finally admitted. Mom and Dad approached her after your recital at the community center. The one where that critic said you were talented but commercially unviable, I finished, recalling the review that had crushed me for weeks. The night I played my heart out, while my family apparently plotted my romantic replacement. My gaze traveled from Connor's expensive watch, a gift from our father, to Audrey's new designer bag that she'd claimed was a knockoff. Every suspicion I dismissed as paranoia crystallized into sickening reality. Were you ever going to tell me if I hadn't walked in? I asked Audrey. She reached for me, fingers trembling. I did love you, Dom, but your parents made me see that love isn't enough. Connor can provide security, connections. Get out! My voice cut through her explanation like a knife. Both of you. You're being irrational, Connor said, his business school confidence returning. Let's discuss this like adults. The company needs... Get out! The scream tore from somewhere deep and wounded inside me. My violin case crashed against the wall, the instrument inside wailing a discordant protest. They backed toward the door, Audrey sobbing, Connor attempting damage control. Dom, please. Mom and Dad only wanted to control my life, to punish me for choosing music over real estate. I turned away from them, staring out the window at Boston's skyline. Tell them congratulations. They finally won. After the door closed, I stood motionless, the apartment suddenly vast in its emptiness. Then methodically, with hands that refused to tremble, I packed my violin, my compositions, and nothing else. I emptied my modest bank account, called my agent in New York, and booked a one-way ticket. By morning, Dominic Riordan, the disappointing son, the betrayed brother, the abandoned lover, had ceased to exist. In his place stood a man with nothing left to lose, and nothing to prove to anyone but himself. 7 years passed before I sent them invitations to my foundation's gala, addressed in expensive cardstock with gold lettering. By then, I had a Grammy, film credits that appeared before A-list actors' names, and a Manhattan address that made real estate developers like my father whistle with envy. I invited them not from forgiveness, but because some reckonings demand an audience. Some betrayals deserve a final act. And tonight, as they walk into my world, diminished, aging, financially troubled according to industry gossip, I will finally complete the composition their betrayal began. I just didn't expect Audrey to approach me first, eyes filled with tears and regret, whispering, Dom, I need to tell you something about what really happened. From the corner of my eye, I see my parents rushing toward us, panic etched across their faces. They are too late. New York welcomed me with torrential rain, and a room so small I could touch both walls simultaneously. The ceiling leaked onto my violin case, my only remaining possession worth protecting. Betrayal, I discovered, doesn't end with the initial blow. It echoes. Every memory of family dinners where my father toasted loyalty now mocked me. Every time my mother said, "We just want what's best for you, Dominic," revealed itself as manipulation. The foundation of my life had been built on quicksand. My first 5 auditions failed spectacularly. After the last one, a producer pulled me aside. "Your resume says you're passionate about music, but you're playing like it's a funeral dirge." He wasn't wrong. My money evaporated. I took a dishwashing job at a restaurant where the chef hurled insults and spatulas with equal precision. Between shifts, my hands raw from industrial detergent, I tried to compose, but everything sounded like grief, minor chords, and unresolved progressions. My phone buzzed constantly with calls from Boston. My father's voicemails grew increasingly irritated. "Dominic, this childish disappearing act solves nothing." My mothers were performatively concerned. "Sweetheart, we understand you're upset, but family works through these things." Connor's attempts at fraternal connection. "Bro, I know it's complicated, but running away isn't the answer." Audrey's single message cut deepest. "Dom, please. I never meant it to happen this way." I smashed my phone against the wall and bought a burner the next day. Only my agent Lena had the number. 3 months in, she called with what felt like a cruel joke. "I got you an audition with Hirschfeld Studios. They need a composer for a documentary about Hurricane Sandy survivors." "I've never scored a film," I said flatly. "They want someone unknown. Budget reasons." She paused. "Dom, when was the last time you actually played? Not for an audition, just played?" That night, after another punishing shift, I removed my neglected violin from its case. Without sheet music or purpose, I began to play pure improvisation. I played the Betrayal, jagged notes scraping against each other. I played the Humiliation, a descending spiral like my self-worth. I played the Heartbreak, sustained notes quivering with vibrato, mimicking unshed tears. By dawn, my fingers were bleeding. But something had shifted. The music hadn't removed my pain. It had transformed it. I walked into Hirschfeld Studios carrying nothing but my violin and that transformation. "This documentary," I asked the bearded director, "what's it about? People who lost everything in an instant, and how they rebuilt." I nodded. "I understand that story. When I played my sample, raw, born from my sleepless night, the room fell silent. The director removed his headphones slowly. "Who hurt you?" he asked quietly. "I lost something I thought was permanent," I replied. "I'm still learning how to rebuild." He hired me immediately. That documentary won an unexpected award. Critics specifically mentioned the haunting, emotionally authentic score by newcomer Dominic Riordan. More opportunities followed. I composed in the language of my recovery, each piece mapping my climb from devastation to something resembling wholeness. My Hurricane Suite became my signature, the melody that larger studios requested something similar to. None knew it was autobiographical. The storm of betrayal, the flooding of grief, the painstaking reconstruction. 18 months after fleeing Boston, I attended the premiere of my first major film. As my name appeared in the credits, I felt a strange lightness. For 2 hours, hundreds of strangers had experienced emotions guided by my music. My pain had become something useful, something beautiful. Outside the theater, I literally collided with Isabelle Moreau, the film's French-American director. She spilled champagne on my only good suit. "You're him," she said, dabbing at my jacket. "The composer. Your music made me cry during my own film, which is absurd because I've seen it 40 times in editing." She studied me intently. "The way you scored the abandonment scene, it wasn't just sad. It was knowing. Like you understood exactly how it feels to be left behind." She tilted her head. "Do you?" "Yes," I said simply. She nodded once. "I thought so. No one writes abandonment that authentically without living it." She handed me her card. "I'm directing another film next year. Bigger budget. I want you for it." Walking home that night, I realized something crucial. I hadn't thought about my family or Audrey in weeks. My music had ceased being about them. The betrayal that had defined me was becoming just one chapter in a longer story, one I was writing note by note. 3 years after leaving Boston, I received news that Connor and Audrey had married at our parents' country club. I felt nothing, not anger, not pain, not even satisfaction that they were now legally bound to their purchased arrangement. That evening, I completed the composition that would eventually earn my first Academy Award nomination. It contained no trace of past pain, only the musician I had become in spite of it. And I began planning my foundation for young musicians from underprivileged backgrounds, children whose families might not believe in their dreams, musicians who needed someone to say, "Your voice matters." 7 years to the day after leaving Boston, I sent gold-embossed invitations to the Riordan family, inviting them to witness exactly what their $50,000 had purchased. Not my silence, not my failure, but my freedom. "Your music tells stories most composers spend lifetimes chasing," Isabel said, tracing the rim of her wine glass. "Where does it come from?" 6 months after our first meeting, we sat on her Brooklyn terrace under Manhattan's twinkling skyline. My third collaboration with her had just won a prestigious award. "From losing everything," I answered simply, "and discovering that wasn't the end of my story." She nodded. "That explains why your abandoned child theme made test audiences weep. You weren't imagining abandonment. You were remembering it." Her perceptiveness unsettled me. I'd spent years compartmentalizing, Dom the betrayed son locked away, Dom the composer free to succeed. Isabel saw through the division effortlessly. Walking her home, our hands brushed accidentally. The electricity terrified me. After Audrey, I'd sworn off emotional entanglements. "You're afraid," she observed. "Not of failure, of connection. Whatever broke you," she added when I didn't respond, "did a remarkably incomplete job." She kissed my cheek and disappeared into her building, leaving me touching the spot where warmth lingered on my skin. Meanwhile, industry gossip revealed Riordan Development was struggling. My father had made risky investments before the market crashed. Connor lacked the instinct to salvage their position. Most surprisingly, Audrey contacted me through my agent, a formal email congratulating my success, mentioning she now managed PR for my parents' company. The subtext was clear. They needed my rising profile to help them. I deleted it without response. 4 years after leaving Boston, Isabel and I moved in together. Our relationship evolved cautiously, me perpetually expecting betrayal, her demonstrating with quiet patience that love needn't be transactional. "You still haven't told me their names," she said one night as Manhattan's glow cast shadows across our bedroom. "Who?" "The people who convinced you love is transactional." "Would knowing change anything?" I asked. She traced my face with her fingertip. "No? But carrying unnamed ghosts keeps them powerful. Naming them makes them mortal." That night I told her everything. The $50,000, Connor, my parents, the engagement ring I'd never given. She listened without interruption, tears sliding silently down her face. When I finished, she said one thing that changed everything. "They must be so afraid of you now." "Afraid? They forgot about me years ago." She shook her head. "Your success is their failure. Your happiness proves their worldview wrong. Nothing terrifies people more than evidence they've made a catastrophic mistake." Her words revealed a perspective I'd never considered. I'd been working to prove them wrong without realizing I already had. The next month, I received a wedding invitation from my childhood friend Marcus. The photos showed him with his fiancée outside my father's office building. Among the suggested accommodations was a hotel owned by Riordan Development. A setup, an attempt to lure me back to their territory. I tossed it aside, but Isabel retrieved it. "We should go," she said. "Why would I return to a city full of ghosts? Because you're haunting yourself with what you imagine they think. See them as they truly are now." At the wedding, I saw them across the reception hall. My parents, aged beyond their years. My mother's hands fluttered nervously. My father's once commanding presence had diminished. Connor approached awkwardly, champagne glass clutched like a shield. "Dom, you're looking successful." Audrey appeared at his side, fine lines etched around her eyes. Her smile toward Connor contained no warmth. "Dominic, I've followed your career. Congratulations." As we exchanged sterile pleasantries, I witnessed what Isabel had predicted. Fear. Fear in my father's darting glances. Fear in my mother's overcompensating cheerfulness. Fear in Audrey's tightly controlled expression. What had they expected? The broken musician they discarded. Instead, they faced a critically acclaimed composer, with a woman who had chosen him without incentive or manipulation. That night, I made my decision. I would invite them all to my foundation's inaugural gala, not for reconciliation, but for resolution. "Are you sure?" Isabel asked. "They don't deserve your forgiveness." "This isn't about forgiveness," I replied. "It's about finally writing the last measure of a piece that's been unfinished for too long." I sent the invitations knowing exactly what I was orchestrating. Not revenge, but the final note in a symphony of release. "They've confirmed," my assistant said, handing me the RSVP card embossed with the Riordan family crest, a pretentious addition my father had commissioned when his company first turned a profit. "All 4 of them." I nodded, surprised despite myself. Part of me had expected them to decline, to avoid facing what they'd done. The fact that they were coming meant, what exactly? Curiosity? Regret? Another attempt at manipulation? Isabel found me later staring at seating charts in my study, moving place cards like chess pieces. "You've changed their table assignment 3 times, she observed, resting her hands on my shoulders. "You're overthinking this. I need to get it right." "There is no right to get, Dom. This isn't a composition you can perfect. It's human emotion, messy and unpredictable." She was right, of course. For weeks I'd been orchestrating the gala with meticulous precision. The venue, Manhattan's most prestigious concert hall. The guest list, a carefully curated collection of industry elites, critics who'd championed my work, musicians I'd mentored. Even the program had been arranged to tell my story without words. The hurricane suite that launched my career, then pieces that chronicled my ascent, culminating in my newest composition, premiering that night. A week before the event, Isabel found me at the piano at 3 a.m., working obsessively on that final piece. "Come to bed," she said softly. "I need to finish this." She sat beside me on the bench. "What are you really trying to say with this composition?" My fingers stilled on the keys. "I don't know anymore." "Yes, you do." Her voice was gentle but insistent. "This isn't about music. It's about them." I closed the piano lid. When they betrayed me, they took my voice, my future. When I left Boston, I thought I was finding a new voice. But I've been responding to them all these years, proving them wrong, showing them what they lost. And now? Now I want to stop playing their music. I want mine to be the only voice in my head. She nodded. "Then that's what your composition should say." The night before the gala, I received an unexpected call. Connor's number. After a moment's hesitation, I answered. "Dom?" He sounded surprised I'd picked up. "We're in New York for tomorrow." "I know." "Right." Awkward silence. "Listen, Mom and Dad are nervous about seeing you." "They should be," he sighed. "Are you planning something? Some kind of public, I don't know, revenge?" The question amused me. 7 years ago, revenge had consumed my thoughts. Now it seemed so small, so meaningless. "I'm not planning anything, Connor." "Then why invite us? After all this time?" I considered lying, then decided truth was more unsettling. "Because I'm finally ready to look at you all and feel nothing." The silence stretched between us. Finally, he said, "Audrey's not the same person she was. Neither am I. She's been unhappy. For years." His voice dropped. "The money's gone, Dom. All of it. Bad investments, market crash. Parents are leveraged to the eyeballs. That's not my concern." "No." Bitterness crept into his voice. "Of course it's not. You're living the dream while we're—" He caught himself. "Forget it. We'll see you tomorrow." The line went dead before I could respond. Isabel found me on the balcony, staring at the city lights. "Connor called," I said before she could ask. "What did he want?" "To warn me they're broke, as if I'd care about their financial troubles." "Do you?" I shook my head. I thought I'd feel satisfaction. Instead, I just feel nothing. They made their choices. She studied my face. You once told me your father measured everyone's worth by their bank balance. Now the tables have turned. He's worth nothing by his own standard. The irony wasn't lost on me. My father had paid to remove me from the family picture because I wouldn't bring financial success. Now I had wealth beyond what he'd ever imagined, while he faced ruin. The thing is, I said slowly, I don't think like him. I never did. Money was never my measure of success. That's why you've succeeded where he's failed, Isabel replied. He builds to possess. You create to express. The morning of the gala, I woke before dawn and went to my piano. The composition that had eluded me for weeks suddenly flowed effortlessly. I wasn't writing about betrayal or triumph anymore. I was writing about freedom. When I finished, Isabel stood in the doorway, coffee mug in hand. You found it, I nodded. It's not about them anymore. It never was, she smiled. They just thought it was. Hours later, standing in my tuxedo as the first guests began to arrive, I felt strangely calm. The venue glowed with subtle lighting. String quartets positioned throughout played selections from my repertoire. Photographs lined the entryway. My journey from that leaking room in Queens to international recognition. They're here, Isabel whispered, stunning in her midnight blue gown. At the entrance, I took a deep breath and turned to face my past. Ready? She asked, squeezing my hand. I nodded. It's time for the final movement. They entered like strangers in a foreign land, hesitant, eyes darting nervously. My father's custom suit hung loose on his frame. My mother clutched her vintage pearls as if confirming they were still there. Connor's forced smile never reached his eyes. And Audrey looked haunted. When our eyes met across the foyer, 7 years collapsed into seconds. I approached with measured steps, Isabel's hand steady in mine. The nearby quartet shifted into my composition about shattered trust. A coincidence that felt like destiny. Welcome, I said simply. My father extended his hand first. Dominic. Quite an achievement. His grip was weaker than I remembered. His once commanding presence diminished. I nodded acknowledgement but offered nothing more. My mother attempted to embrace me. I allowed it briefly, a formal gesture devoid of warmth. The place looks wonderful, darling. We always knew you were talented. The lie hung between us, too absurd to address. Connor stood awkwardly, champagne already in hand. Congratulations, bro. Audrey remained slightly apart, studying me intensely. Dominic, she said softly. Nothing more. I introduced Isabel, whose gracious poise made their discomfort more palpable. We exchanged sterile pleasantries about the weather, their flight, the venue, meaningless small talk of strangers forced together. Your table is near the stage, I explained. The program begins in 20 minutes. As they moved away, Audrey lingered. Can we speak privately? She asked, barely above a whisper. Before I could answer, a renowned conductor approached, and Audrey melted back into the crowd. But her request lingered, raising questions I thought buried. The gala proceeded exactly as planned. My opening remarks received warm applause. The musicians performed flawlessly. Throughout it all, I felt my family watching, witnessing the world I'd built without them. During intermission, I found myself momentarily alone. Audrey appeared as if she'd been waiting for precisely this opportunity. I need to tell you something, she said urgently. Something I should have told you years ago. I looked at her impassively. Nothing you could say would matter now. It wasn't 50,000, she continued. It was 500,000, and a permanent position for my father at their company. He was about to lose everything in bankruptcy. The revelation sparked only distant curiosity. So your betrayal was even more expensive than I thought. I had no choice. My father would have gone to prison for fraud. My mother was sick. They knew exactly what to offer. We all have choices, Audrey. I've regretted it every day, she whispered. Connor and I, we're strangers sharing a house. I sold my soul and the payment wasn't worth it. I looked past her to where Isabel stood across the room. Some prices are too high. I know that now. But there's more. Your parents, they're planning to ask you for a loan tonight. Their company is weeks from collapse. A harsh laugh escaped me. Of course they are. They've lost everything. The house is mortgaged. Connor's drowning trying to save what's left. I studied her. Why are you telling me this? Because you deserve to know what's coming. Because after everything, I owe you the truth. She drew a shaky breath. Because I need you to understand it wasn't just about money or Connor. They threatened my family. Part of me wanted to dismiss her words as manipulation, but the desperation in her eyes suggested truth. Not that it changed anything. I've moved on, Audrey. I suggest you do the same. The orchestra began tuning, signaling intermission's end. I spotted my parents huddled with Connor, their faces tense with discussion. The final act began with my newest composition, the piece I'd completed that morning. As the first notes filled the hall, I watched my family's reactions. My father frowned, likely calculating my net worth. My mother dabbed at her eyes, performing appropriate emotion. Connor stared blankly, perhaps rehearsing the loan request. But Audrey's response caught me off guard. She listened with eyes closed, tears streaming unchecked, as if hearing not just music but the story of what might have been. When the piece reached its resolution, discord transforming into unexpected harmony, something shifted inside me. Not forgiveness, something more valuable, indifference. Their power over me suddenly seemed small and distant, like viewing a once devastating storm through the wrong end of a telescope. Afterward, they approached as a unit, my parents flanking Connor, Audrey trailing behind. "Dominic," my father began, businessman's mask firmly in place. "We need to discuss a family matter, perhaps somewhere private?" I smiled genuinely, which seemed to unnerve him. "There's nothing to discuss. I know about the loan you want to ask for. The answer is no." Shock registered on their faces, not at the rejection, but at being anticipated. "But we're family," my mother protested weakly. "Are we? You paid to have me removed from the family, if I recall correctly." My father's face darkened. "That's ancient history. We made a mistake." "Yes," I agreed. "You did. And now you're living with the consequences, just as I lived with mine." I raised my glass in a final toast. To freedom. Yours and mine. May we all find peace with the choices we've made. I walked away then, toward Isabel, toward my future, leaving them with their past. The symphony was finally complete. Every discord transformed. I was free. If my story resonated with you, please like this video, subscribe, and share your own story of resilience in the comments below. Your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today.